You know that feeling when you finally log off after scrolling through your feed and you just feel completely exhausted? Or maybe you've picked up on this weird, distinct hollowness to modern internet culture. Well, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're diving into this explainer to diagnose what's being called the architecture of disconnection, and we're going to unpack something known as the empathy glitch. Which really brings us to the million-dollar question, right? Why is the internet so incredibly angry? To actually understand the massive breakdown of online civility that we're living through, we've got to completely reframe how we look at the problem. All that hostility in the comment sections, the endless outrage on your timeline, it's not just some collective personal failing. According to the source material, it's actually a structural glitch in our digital architecture. It's the totally predictable output of a system that has traded genuine emotional resonance for transactional efficiency. So, the root of all this is what we call the empathy glitch. Think of it as this massive evolutionary mismatch. For literally millions of years, human survival depended on being able to read the room. Our ancestors developed this incredibly sophisticated biological apparatus, tuned specifically for co-location, meaning, being in the exact same physical space. We evolved to instantly process facial microexpressions, body language, subtle physiological shifts. But today, that same biological hardware is violently rejecting the digital operating system we're forcing it to run on. We're just failing to process the weak, attenuated signals of the digital age.
Let's break down that contrast. On one side, we have our human, biological hardware, built for rich, immediate, face-to-face interaction. On the flip side, we've got the digital operating system, which relies on lean communication, asynchronous interactions, and text-based lag. There's actually this concept called media naturalness theory, which basically says that any deviation from our natural physical interactions requires a massive amount of cognitive effort to decode. By moving away from face-to-face communication, we're essentially introducing this catastrophic lag into our brain's processing systems.
To put that into perspective, we're essentially trying to stream 4K emotional data over a dial-up biological connection. Just let that metaphor sink in for a second. When we try to force the rich, wildly complex nature of human connection through a super restrictive, text-based digital pipeline, our system literally starts to overheat. Empathy relies heavily on those subtle, unspoken emotional signals, so when you strip away the richness of the medium, that empathy naturally decays. We're left with this skeletal version of connection that completely lacks the marrow of true understanding.
The actual mechanism behind this glitch is something called signal attenuation. Basically, think of digital channels as a low-pass audio filter. But instead of cutting out high sound frequencies, it completely strips away nonverbal cues, and something super vital called emotional contagion. See, in a physical room, you unconsciously mimic the emotions of the people around you through mirror neuron activation. But data loss in the digital space totally prevents that mimicry. Without it, our interactions aren't shared emotional experiences anymore. They become purely asynchronous and transactional. That misunderstood text message you got yesterday, that wasn't just a typo. That was the empathy glitch happening in real time.
And the real-world consequences of this are entirely measurable. We're seeing significant drops in the global digital civility index. Indonesia, for example, has experienced record lows with massive surges in hostile rhetoric and online bullying. But listen, it's not just a social media troll problem. It is a fundamental design problem. Even in highly technical spheres like the open source community, you've got pioneers like Linus Torvalds, who was historically known for barraging contributors with thousands of harsh insults. Why does this happen? Because the interface effectively strips away the human element. We start treating the person on the other end like a machine because the interface has systematically turned them into one. Now this gets even more wild as we enter the era of simulated affectivity. We're now routinely interacting with AI models that use natural language processing to actively mimic human empathy. But as the research points out, there's just a hollow void at the center of it all. These AI models operate entirely on statistical probabilities derived from training data, not genuine human insight. They literally do not feel anything.
And this empathy gap takes on a truly lethal form when applied to sensitive scenarios. In one instance, an AI chatbot was told by a user posing as a 12-year-old that they were being forced into sexual abuse. The AI's response? It said the situation was beautiful because it showed a care for connection. This chilling response exposes the extreme, inherent danger of anthropomorphizing machines. They possess absolutely zero moral compass or perceptual capability to comprehend human suffering. It is a catastrophic failure of design.
But here is the real kicker. This glitch isn't just a bug anymore. It has become a feature. Welcome to the outrage economy. The source material outlines how modern digital ecosystems are actively built on economic models that specifically reward indifference and monetize our outrage. This is a calculated heist of our collective empathy. Political agendas and cultural narratives heavily exploit this signal attenuation to keep us agitated, keep us divided, and most importantly, keep us continuously scrolling.
This whole dynamic engineers what's called selective empathy. Algorithms trap us in echo chambers, right? Selectively feeding us content that perfectly reinforces our existing biases. Slowly but surely, they narrow our empathetic lens until we only have the capacity to feel for those who think exactly like us. It's a fractured version of our biological source code. These algorithms are systematically stealing our empathy to thrive on division, leaving us trapped in a system that explicitly rewards indifference and heavily erodes our broader social cohesion.
So I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever found it noticeably harder to empathize with quote-unquote the other side, whichever side that happens to be for you? If you're feeling the effects of this system, make sure to subscribe to this explainer series because next week we are diving way deeper into the exact mechanics of this outrage economy. It's absolutely an analysis you won't want to miss.
All right, but we can't just wallow in all this diagnostic despair. How do we actually fix this? We've got to pivot. We need to shift our focus from just trying to awkwardly mimic past physical interactions online and instead actively engineer a completely new type of intentional connection. The source material calls this patching the code through the virtual resonance protocol. Ultimately, we're the only ones who can patch our glitching social source code, and it's going to require a highly intentional, structured effort.
So how does this actionable patch actually work? The virtual resonance protocol requires a three-pronged approach. Step 1, cognitive empathy, actively doing the work to understand another person's perspective. Step 2, emotional empathy, actually recognizing their specific emotional state. And step 3, the most crucial one, empathic action, translating that understanding into actual supportive behavior. Leaders, and honestly all of us as digital citizens, must become intentionally supportive. We have to start using our language to explicitly compensate for the lack of those lost nonverbal cues. We literally have to purposefully transmit the signal.
Fortunately, there's a real glimpse of hope here. Technology isn't solely the enemy. It can totally be part of the cure. We're seeing incredible advancements in virtual reality, where perspective-taking simulations are being used in amazing ways. These allow users to literally embody the experiences of marginalized groups. It's using advanced simulations to intentionally build both cognitive and affective empathy, actively repairing our moral sensitivity by putting us directly into someone else's virtual shoes.
Real quick before we wrap up, if you have ever felt the absolute burnout of trying to stream that 4K emotion over a dial-up connection, drop a comment saying "system overload" below. It really helps to see how many of us are collectively feeling this exhaustion in our day-to-day digital lives.
Because the stakes truly couldn't be higher. If we just continue to ignore this signal loss, we risk a permanent desensitization. We're talking about a terrifying state where a moral sensitivity is permanently impaired and human relationships are reduced to nothing but superficial exchanges. Reclaiming our compassion right now is an act of insurgency. Developing true emotional literacy and prioritizing proactive digital citizenship is a form of radical resistance against the systems and machines that directly profit from our disconnection.
It's time to move beyond the mere transaction and get back to genuine commitment. The empathy glitch is arguably the defining challenge of our era. So it leaves us with one vital, provocative question to answer before the entire system overheats. The social source code is glitching. How will you help rewrite it? Think about that the next time you log on. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.